White smoke pierced the grey sky above St. Peter's Square, announcing to the world, Habemus Papam. Jubilation swept over the gathered faithful as bells pealed, echoing in hearts a renewed hope. The choice of the new successor of Peter marked a new chapter in the Church's history. Behind the red curtains of the central balcony of the Vatican Basilica, a moment laden with symbolism and tradition was being prepared. The new pope, vested in the insignia of the pontificate, awaited the official announcement of his name to the world in silent prayer. By presenting himself as Leo XIV, the new pope evoked the memory of great pontiffs who bore that name, especially Leo the Great, defender of orthodoxy, and Leo XIII, promoter of Catholic social doctrine. The choice signaled doctrinal firmness, allied to pastoral charity. His first appearance was marked by a serene and steady gaze. He raised his right arm in blessing, but before pronouncing any words, he made a long sign of the cross. The gesture, simple and traditional, was full of depth. Above all, he was a pastor who blessed. The traditional Urbi et Orbi blessing, delivered in a firm voice, resounded as a call to unity, conversion, and peace. He improvised no speeches. He followed the rite with reverence and fidelity. There were no applauses, only prayerful silence among the faithful. Immediately after the blessing, Leo XIV withdrew to the Sistine Chapel, where he remained in prayer before the Blessed Sacrament. There, kneeling in deep recollection, he consecrated his pontificate to the heart of Jesus and to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The gesture was not widely reported, yet it stirred great emotion among members of the Curia. Silent prayer before the tabernacle was his first act of governance, to entrust his mission entirely to God's will. Even before any official announcement, the new pope asked the masters of liturgical ceremonies that forthcoming celebrations follow the most traditional style possible, with Gregorian chant and the use of Latin, signaling his love for the Church's liturgical heritage. The first document signed by Leo XIV was a private letter to cloistered monks and nuns around the world. In it, he requested constant prayers for his ministry and assured them that he would rely on the hidden and silent support of contemplative souls. Next, he received the cardinal electors, not with protocol speeches, but with a moment of joint prayer. He asked everyone to pray a rosary for the Church, the world, and those who suffer. He himself led the sorrowful mysteries. The first official meetings were not with heads of state or media representatives. Leo XIV asked to meet with those responsible for the doctrinal, liturgical, and missionary dicasteries. His focus, faith, liturgy, and evangelization. On his first night as Pope, Leo XIV did not sleep in the papal apartments. He preferred to rest in a simple cell at the Domus Sanctae Marthae, where he spent the night in vigil and meditation, as discreetly reported by his collaborators. The following morning, he celebrated Holy Mass in the Pauline Chapel, with few present in Latin, facing east, with communion received kneeling and on the tongue. The homily, brief yet profound, was an invitation to fidelity and penance. One of the first public signs of his governance was the restoration of fasting and abstinence on Fridays as obligatory penitential practice, in keeping with the Church's ancient spirit. The decision was met with surprise, yet also with reverence. Upon visiting the Basilica of St. John Lateran, the Pope's cathedral as Bishop of Rome, he knelt for a long time before the altar and kissed the crucifix with tears in his eyes. Then, without speeches, he distributed rosaries to the poor and to pilgrims. Leo XIV asked the Congregation for the Causes of Saints to reopen several causes of beatification for 20th century martyrs, especially victims of communism and aggressive secularism, demonstrating sensitivity to a suffering church. His first Sunday Angelus did not center on social or political themes. He spoke about the importance of prayer, devotion to the Virgin Mary, and the urgent need to return to the sacrament of confession. One of his most symbolic actions was to restore to St. Peter's Basilica the ancient ceremonial baldachin, removed decades earlier, which represents the majesty of the papal altar and the sacredness of the Eucharistic sacrifice. The new pope ordered a general review of modern liturgical texts in light of the teachings of the Council of Trent, Vatican I, and the tradition of the Church Fathers, indicating a quest for greater doctrinal cohesion. He invited the priestly fraternity of St. Pius X to a private audience without fanfare, signaling a sincere desire for reconciliation and unity while relinquishing neither truth nor fidelity to the magisterium. In his first letter to the people of God, he did not address economic or political topics. He wrote about the centrality of the Eucharist, the urgency of perpetual adoration, and the necessity of forming children and youth in doctrine. On the Vatican's social media channels, the first posts were not made by media departments, but by the Pope himself. A brief message. The Church belongs to Christ. Pray that I do not flee, as Peter did. Leo XIV's coat of arms was presented simply. At the center, the Lamb of God, symbol of Christ's redemptive sacrifice, flanked by Mary's heart and the cross of Saint Benedict. The motto, Veritas in Caritate, truth in charity. In his first public audience, he greeted the sick, the elderly, and prisoners, affirming that the gaze of Christ reaches them first. He asked that they never feel forgotten by the Church. Thus began the pontificate of Leo XIV, with small gestures yet profoundly rooted in tradition. His mission opened not with ruptures or noisy novelties, but with the serenity of the saints and the firmness of the martyrs. The first week of Leo XIV's papacy was marked by reverent silence, no inflammatory speeches or hasty reforms. Instead, he guided the Church with discreet and deeply symbolic gestures, fitting for a true spiritual father. By convoking a Eucharistic vigil of adoration at the Basilica of St. Mary Major, open to all the faithful, the Pope reaffirmed the center of his pontificate: Jesus Christ present in the Eucharist. He asked the faithful to offer sacrifices for his mission. In a private ceremony, he visited the tomb of St. Pius V and knelt in prolonged prayer. Then he asked that his papal cassock be made with the same simple cut used by that Dominican pontiff, a gesture of humility and historical reverence. Publicly, he declared his intention not to abolish any traditional liturgical form approved by previous popes, saying, "The Holy Spirit blows where he wills, but never against tradition." Leo XIV suspended the usual interviews with major media outlets. He said that his mission was not to please the world, but to confirm his brothers in the faith. This decision divided opinions, yet gained the respect of those who longed for doctrinal clarity. In an audience with Italian bishops, he surprised everyone by offering not an official document, but a copy of the Roman Catechism, highlighting the sections on the sacraments, hell, and grace. His first encyclical, still in preparation, was announced with the provisional title Custodia Traditionem. In it, the Pope intends to reaffirm the continuity of the Catholic faith against the dangers of confusion and relativism. Internally, he reorganized the liturgical calendar of papal celebrations to include more moments of silence, penance, and Gregorian chant. He resumed using the Sistine Chapel as his preferred place for private masses. Leo XIV refused gala dinners, banquets, and formalities. He preferred simple meals shared with seminarians invited from various parts of the world, whom he exhorted, "Be holy priests, or do not be priests at all." In an unexpected gesture, he visited a Little Sisters of the Poor home in Rome. There, without cameras, he served lunch to the elderly and asked them to pray for the purity of the church, saying, "The church is young only when she is pure." He appointed as his first close collaborator a Benedictine monk, Dom Anselm, from an abbey in France, known for theological orthodoxy and love of the liturgy, breaking with the tradition of choosing someone from Vatican diplomacy. In an internal address to the Curia, he declared, "The crisis of the Church is a crisis of faith and reverence. If we desire renewal, it must begin with bent knees and converted hearts." He decreed that every Friday would be a day of fasting and abstinence in the Vatican, including cardinals and curial officials. He justified, "The modern world has forgotten the value of penance. The Church cannot follow that path." In a meeting with the Congregation for Divine Worship, he expressed his desire that the Tridentine Mass be celebrated freely worldwide in the spirit of Summorum Pontificum, and asked for solid liturgical formation in seminaries. He ordered a symbolic penitential pilgrimage to the Scala Santa, climbing the steps on his knees in silence, followed by several bishops. The image of the Pope in this act deeply moved the faithful. He reaffirmed priestly celibacy as a treasure of the Latin Church, declaring that any attempt to relativize it would be a betrayal of the promises made by generations of holy priests. In a message sent to the faithful in China, he assured them of his prayers and support, asking them to stand firm amid persecution. He stated, "Where there is a cross, there Christ is with you." He proclaimed the coming year as the year of liturgical reparation, dedicated to purifying sacred celebrations, to reverence at the altars, and to restoring the sense of the sacred. One of the most striking moments was his visit to the Vatican crypt, where he prayed silently before the tombs of popes forgotten by the media, yet faithful to the end. He told his aides, "Here lie the true heroes of the Church." Leo XIV asked preachers worldwide to dedicate the coming Advent to sermons on the four last things: death, judgment, hell, and heaven. "The modern soul must awaken from its spiritual slumber," he said. In a meeting with theologians, he requested in-depth studies on the theology of martyrdom. According to him, the time of martyrs has not ended, only the enemy's methods have changed. He established a new advisory council composed of monks, nuns, catechists, and missionaries, people with lives of prayer, not political positions. Their mission, to discern the signs of the times in the light of tradition. He authorized the restoration of the ancient 40 hours devotion in all dioceses that wish it, encouraging the faithful to adore and to confess. "Where there is adoration, there is hope," he declared. He stated in a letter to Catholic parents, "The family is the first seminary, the first convent, the first altar. Save your families, and you will save the Church's future." At the close of his first week as Pope, Leo XIV was not yet making headlines for structural reforms, but he had won hearts through his fidelity, his spirit of prayer, and his silent firmness. Tradition was breathing again. The third week of Leo XIV's pontificate began with a gesture of great spiritual impact: the solemn consecration of Vatican City to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, in a ceremony celebrated in St. Peter's Square. The ceremony was marked by profound reverence. The Pope delivered no lengthy speeches. He simply read the traditional prayers of consecration and invited all present to renew their baptismal vows in silence. candles lit in their hands. In a letter addressed to every parish priest in the world, Leo XIV asked them to intensify catechesis on the last things and to resume direct teaching from the Catechism of St. Pius X, especially for children and adolescents. A decree from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, personally approved by the Pope, stipulated that all theological formation in seminaries return to St. Thomas Aquinas's Summa Theologica as the fundamental basis for teaching and reflection. While visiting a hospital in Rome, Leo XIV spoke with terminally ill patients, exhorting them to offer their sufferings for the sanctification of priests and the conversion of sinners. In tears, he kissed the forehead of a dying young man. In a reserved address to the Pontifical Academy for Life, he firmly condemned any attempt to legitimize abortion, euthanasia, and genetic manipulations that violate human dignity. He said, "Life does not belong to us. It is God's inviolable gift." Leo XIV issued an appeal for unceasing prayer for the clergy, saying, "A priest who does not pray is a house without a foundation. A bishop who does not fast is a blind man leading other blind men." He asked each parish to create intercession groups for priests. He revoked certain ambiguous pastoral norms that had caused doctrinal confusion in recent years, especially on family morality. In their place, he clearly reaffirmed the teachings of Humanae Vitae and Familiaris Consortio. He encouraged dioceses to conduct popular missions with traditional preaching, processions, and penitential retreats. He said that the soul of the people awakens when it hears the truth spoken with love and courage. In an audience with Catholic journalists, he declared that Catholic communication must first evangelize, then inform, never the other way around. He warned against turning the church into a spectacle or a stage for human disputes. A moving gesture was his meeting with victims of abuse within the church. He listened to them one by one, wept with them, and asked forgiveness in Christ's name. Afterward, he prayed a reparatory rosary before the Blessed Sacrament. In a confidential document to bishops, he stated that true church reform begins at the altar. He encouraged prelates to set the example: dignified celebration of Mass, frequent confession, spiritual direction, and an intense life of prayer. He decreed that all dioceses establish perpetual adoration chapels and encourage frequent confession, especially before major liturgical solemnities. He said that the soul blooms only when it bathes in grace. He reinforced that genuine ecumenical dialogue can occur only on the basis of revealed truth without relativism. He said, "Unity without truth is a pact of silence with error, and the Church cannot betray her Lord." In a letter to young people, Leo XIV wrote, "Do not be deceived by the spirit of the age. Do not follow the idols of pleasure, technology, and selfishness. Follow the Lamb, even if the path is narrow." His love for sacred music became evident when he appointed a conservative maestro to the Sistine Chapel Choir with the mission of restoring Gregorian chant and sacred polyphony as expressions of the Church's liturgical soul. He convened a consultative synod on priestly formation, whose theme will be "Rekindle the Flame, the priest as man of sacrifice, prayer, and truth." The Pope desires holy priests, not merely efficient ones. A new Vatican document with his personal approval will issue norms on the use of churches for cultural activities, requiring that the sacred never be offended and that any profane use be forbidden. Leo XIV decided to celebrate personally and in the traditional rite the principal liturgical feasts of the Roman calendar to show the world the beauty and continuity of the Catholic faith. He encouraged the practice of spiritual direction among the laity, recommending that well-formed priests help the faithful discern their vocations and combat the capital sins. Without direction, the soul gets lost among vanities and illusions, he said. He declared the upcoming Corpus Christi one of the high points of his pontificate, with a solemn procession through the streets of Rome, the recovery of ancient traditions, and a special invitation to Catholic youth. He ordered the production of thousands of simple rosaries to be sent to war zones, urban peripheries, and prisons. He said, "I have no armies or gold. I have the rosary, and with it we will win the world for Christ." He instituted the Week of Truth, to be celebrated annually in October, focusing on catechesis, moral doctrine, and study of the magisterium, a call for the whole Church to rediscover the beauty of believing with both intellect and heart. In a doctrinal document, he reaffirmed the immutability of the Church's moral teachings. He stated that charity without truth is sentimentality, and truth without charity is rigidity. The Church needs both, as Jesus was, full of grace and truth. Even after only a few days of pontificate, Leo XIV had already made it clear. His mission was not to please men, but to sanctify souls. And that began with truth, silence, and the cross. The first month of his pontificate drew to a close, and the world already realized that Leo XIV would not be a pope of slogans or passing novelties, but one of deep roots and eyes fixed on heaven. He sought not popularity, but fidelity. On his first journey outside the Vatican, the Pope went to the shrine of La Salette in the French Alps. There, amid mountains and silence, he prayed before the Virgin who weeps for her children's infidelities. During the homily in that sacred place, he exhorted the faithful to deep conversion. Time is short, eternity is long, the soul is too precious to live in distraction. His words rang out as a direct appeal to conscience. Returning to Rome, he visited the tomb of Saint Philip Neri, and smiling told a young priest, "Holiness is joyful. Whoever lives the truth lives in freedom and peace." It was the strength of orthodoxy united to the sweetness of the saints. One action that deeply moved the faithful was the revival of the tradition of the apostolic blessing for expectant mothers, promoted in Roman parishes and encouraged worldwide as a sign of love for nascent life. Receiving a group of children, he knelt to their level, spoke about guardian angels, and gave out small scapulars. He said, "Protect your soul. It already belongs to God." He insisted on personally hearing the confessions of some of them. In a letter to Carthusian monks, he wrote, "Your silence sustains my cry. While I speak to the world, you speak to God." Leo XV always valued contemplative charisms as the Church's hidden lung. He convened a World Day of Reparation for sins committed against the Eucharist. That day will include perpetual adoration in every diocese, fasting and confessions. If we do not make reparation, we become accomplices in forgetfulness. He sent a special envoy to Lebanon with relics of Eastern saints as a sign of closeness to persecuted Christians. He reaffirmed, "The Church has no ethnic center. Wherever there is an altar, there is Rome." Or in his first audience with artists and intellectuals, he requested works that reflect the beauty of God and the truth of the gospel. He said, "Art must elevate. If it debases, it is not divine, but a caricature of eternal beauty." He encouraged monasteries to resume the craft of liturgical objects, hosts, vestments, candles, uniting work and prayer. Everything that touches the altar must be born of prayer. He ordered that future canonizations include a detailed analysis of doctrinal fidelity in addition to miracles. Holiness is not only human charity, but integral fidelity to the received faith. Responding to doctrinal confusions in certain Catholic universities, Leo XIV established stricter criteria for the use of the term Catholic, requiring explicit submission to the magisterium and to the Church's moral teaching. In a gesture of reconciliation, he invited a group of schismatic bishops to a silent and adoring spiritual retreat themed Ut Unum Sint, that all may be one. He showed that charity never abandons truth. He expressly prohibited show masses, spectacular or theatrical celebrations that disrespect the rite's sacredness. The Mass is not a performance, it is Calvary made present. And he created the day of thanksgiving for hidden vocations, dedicated to souls consecrated in secret, to lay people who evangelize without a stage, and to the sick who offer their sufferings. They invisibly sustain the Church, he said. He encouraged bishops to resume pastoral visits house by house with crucifix and holy water in hand. He said, "A shepherd who does not know his sheep loses the scent of the flock and the sense of eternity." At a rainy Sunday Angelus, he appeared without an umbrella, saying, "The cross gets wet and sometimes hurts, but it is the cross that leads us to heaven." His simple smile contrasted with the depth of his words. He initiated the beatification process of 3 modern young martyrs who died defending chastity and faith. "Youth does not need permissiveness, it needs purpose," he wrote. He sent a message to prisoners worldwide. "No cell is darker than sin, yet no bars resist grace." He asked that every prison have at least a Bible and a crucifix. He declared Saint Joseph the patron of his pontificate, asking men to reclaim their role as guardians of faith within their families. "He who prays with his children saves them twice," he said. He established a special fund to financially support seminaries in poor countries without relying on NGOs. A vocation must spring from faith, not from strategies. He created the Good Shepherd Cross, a new decoration for missionaries who dedicate their lives to regions hostile to the Catholic faith. Whoever brings Christ where he is not loved deserves heaven on earth. At the end of the first month, Leo XIV addressed the world with a brief and moving message. "I am a limited man, but I serve an eternal God, and it is to him that I ask to govern you through me." Thus closed the first month of Pope Leo XIV's pontificate, a beginning marked by silence, liturgy, prayer, and fidelity to tradition. And for millions of Catholics around the world, that beginning was already a true sign of the times.